Welcome back to Askewed Reviews, and today we have a fan request for a double feature. Our first film is the 2022 horror mystery thriller X. Here is your trivia question for today. How soon after X was the script for the prequel Pearl created? The answer will be at the end of this video. So our film takes place in 1979, where the local police are looking into a massacre that's occurred on a farm. We then jump back just a little bit in time to meet our main characters, Maxine, Wayne, Bobby Lynn, Jackson, Lorraine, and RJ. So our group of friends gathers together into a van and travels off to a remote farm in the middle of Texas. Now, this group decides to rent a small piece of property on the farm because they're actually a film crew and actors looking to make a movie. And this movie is not just any movie, it's a pornographic movie. Now, our group of friends is hanging out, having fun, and just shooting a movie. That is, at least until the owners of the property, Pearl and Howard, decide to start being a little odd and get a little violent. So, will our group of actors and crew be able to finish their movie, The Farmer's Daughter? Or will they end up being the people that were in the massacre from the beginning of the film? Ty West is the writer and director of this film, and it definitely feels like he was inspired by movies like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Speaking of Texas, that's where the movie takes place, but the entire film was actually made in New Zealand. Now, in case you were wondering, the reason why the movie is called X is it's in reference to the X rating. When that first came out, it just meant that persons under the age of 16 were not able to go see that film. Now, originally, there were a lot of films that fit into that category, like A Clockwork Orange, Fritz the Cat, Last Tango in Paris, Midnight Cowboy, and even Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song. Now, in the 70s, though, pornographic movies started to use the X rating to get their stuff out into theaters as well. Now, this ended up causing an issue as some confusion happened as to whether or not it was pornographic or just violence or something else. So then came about the R rating, which you had to be 17 or older to watch and would signify the difference between violence, some sexual content, or if it was full-on pornographic. And then eventually in 1990, they got rid of the X rating and it was just NC-17 for anything that still fit into that category. Another little interesting piece of information for you, the movie takes place in 1979, but in 1976 there was actually a very famous pornographic film called Farmer's Daughters, and it actually starred in an early role Spalding Gray. Now, since we're speaking about roles, something we definitely can't skip over is how good Mia Goth was in this film as both Maxine and Pearl. In fact, Mia Goth even reprises a younger version of Pearl in the prequel film to this movie called Pearl. Mia Goth will actually also be reprising her role as Maxine in a third film in this series, which is aptly named Maxine, that hasn't come out as of the filming of this episode. There's also a nice little nod to another film made by Ty West in this one. The gas station is called Peddler Gas Mart. And in the film he made called The Innkeepers, there is a location where most of the film takes place at called the Yankee Peddler Inn. This last piece of information I wish I had a picture for, but when Jackson is drinking out of a milk carton, there is a missing picture on the side, which actually shows a picture of the person that Lorraine finds in the basement of the farm. Another little interesting tidbit, missing pictures on milk cartons didn't actually start appearing until 1984. So a little bit of a mistake on their part for this film. So when it comes to the movie X, I really enjoyed it. I felt like it was an absolute throwback to those classic gruesome slasher films that came out from the 70s and 80s. And Mia Goth, once again, was so good in this film. So I'm going to give this movie a 4 out of 5. Now, as for the trivia question from the beginning of this episode, how soon after X was the script for the prequel Pearl created? So before Ty West started production on X, he actually had to do a 2-week COVID quarantine. During that quarantine, he actually wrote the entire prequel story for Pearl. He showed it to A24 during the production of X, and before that movie even wrapped, they greenlit it, and he was able to make the sequel right away. In fact, during that time, Ty West showed the sequel script to Mia Goth. She fell in love with it. West asked her if she'd be willing to stick around to actually make the movie right away, and she was willing to. So they literally went from one production to the next, and that's why both films released in 2022. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Askewed Reviews. If there's a movie you'd like to see get a review, just mention it in the comments. And as always, like, comment, share, and subscribe.